Tonight, could mental health days become a thing of the past? The truckie first on the scene of Saturday's horror crash tells of nearly hitting the injured teens. And Napier's Pandaland pipe dream.
Mazda proudly brings you Campbell Live.
Kia ora everyone, it's Monday, which according to the payroll people, MYOB, is the day on which people are most likely to phone in sick. Oh, I feel terrible. Friday a second, my throat. The Nats, who with tax cuts plan to mine protected areas and 90-day probation periods for workers, have finally come out of the closet as Nats are attacking the institution of throwing a sickie now too. One sick day and your employer will be able to request a medical certificate. And if you are sick and your employer demands it, you'll have to go to the doctor, get out of bed, get the GP to give you the right paperwork and so on. Not after 3 days, but one. Fair enough or unworkable and draconian, as the Greens are describing it. In a moment, the psychology of sickies, and that truly is fascinating. But first, Fenna Owen is feeling slightly unwell.
Right, ready? Yeah.
This is Aaron. He's having a big weekend. Come Monday,
Thank you.
he won't be up to going to work. In fact, most sick leave taken in New Zealand is on a Monday. But a hangover is no excuse, so Aaron's looking for a lie. Now, it won't surprise you that the internet is chocker with websites offering advice on how to pull off the perfect sickie. On fail-safe sickies, for instance, for a hangover, it suggests telling the old morning after the seafood dinner lie.
Yeah, I've been chucking all night. It's food poisoning. Would you be able to tell the big fella? Yeah, oh, thanks, Becky, yeah.
The website says follow-up at work the next day is critical for faked food poisoning, and using talcum powder or white eyeshadow under the eyes will give a perfect pasty look. Under the new laws, if that hasn't convinced the boss, Aaron will have to provide a doctor's certificate. Well, that might make workers like Aaron more accountable. The head of the New Zealand College of GPs says it's not the answer.
Well, my personal view is no, that's not necessary. We're really encouraging people to manage minor illnesses themselves, and I don't think a medical certificate is required for every episode of every illness.
A certificate poses a problem for the sick leave abuser. Here's Aaron again, trying another trick, the build-up to the sickie.
Oh, mate, I tell you what, this flu really get into me.
And so next day, his co-workers can vouch for his illness.
Yeah, I felt it coming on yesterday. All right, see you tomorrow, mate. Bye. Yeah, g'day. Oh, Tyler. Yeah, all right, mate. All right, I'll meet you at the beach at 15.
Aaron thinks he's convinced them, but flu is such a common excuse. More and more GPs will soon be asked to certify the illness.
We're short of doctors, and the workforce issues are huge, so it's a question of capacity to look after all these people.
The sickie websites say the way to avoid a doctor's visit is to come to work with symptoms, so you get sent home. For example, douse your hair with feverish sweat and put heat in your cheeks.
Morning, Aaron. How are you?
Oh, just a bit under the weather today, Hannah.
Oh, so good.
But ongoing injury is apparently the sickie winner. A crook back is hard to prove, hard to disprove, and it requires time off for appointments, bad back days, and at work you can laze around.
Do you mind taking those boxes up to the bath floor for me?
Oh, well, look, I would, Jill, but my back's really crook right now.
No, that's fine.
Sorry.
Can I get a few more?
Aaron's abuse is certainly not the norm. The average sick leave taken per employee in the last year is only 4 to 6 days. GPs say it's the workers who don't lie, the ones who ignore their sickness, that bosses should be concerned about.
One of the biggest problems that we have, in fact, is persuading people who should be taking time off work to do so. I think the problem is really people going to work when they shouldn't.
Fiona Owen reporting. Right, Dr. Marc Wilson from the School of Psychology at Victoria University in Wellington has conducted a survey that found 70% of people have taken sickies when they weren't. But it's what lies beneath that figure that is really fascinating. Dr. Wilson, welcome to the show. Lovely to have you on it.
Good evening, John.
Let's get the vast majority of us out of the way first and foremost. That is people who take sickies from time to time. Fiona talks about, you know, people only having 4 to 5 sick days a year. So by and large, people aren't opportunistically taking the mickey here, are they?
Well, we also know from research that New Zealanders are amongst some of the hardest working employees in the world as well, certainly New Zealand couples. And I mean, 4.5, 5 sick days a year doesn't sound too bad, but of course that's the average. We'll have some people who don't take any at all. We'll have a lot of people who'll be taking 3 or 4, and we'll have a very small group who'll be taking as many as they can possibly get. The majority of us are pretty good.
I want to come back to the very small group who are really taking, you know, the mickey, but I'm interested in regional differences which you found. People in some centres are more likely to take sickies than people in other centres. Mark, surprise us. Who is most likely to take a sickie?
Well, I was as a Wellingtonian, I was hoping that Auckland would come out the worst, but actually, small people living in small South Island locations reported taking dramatically less sick days than anyone else, which could either reflect the fact that they do take less sick days, or alternatively, they're less likely to be honest about taking sick days.
Or they're happy in their work, because it's people who are unhappy, right, generally, who take the most sick days, as opposed to, you know, people who are genuinely sick.
Well, the people who are, the less happy you are, the less positively you view yourself, then the more sick days you tend to take, and the happier you are to actually admit to taking them as well. But we also find in this particular study that people who tell more lies are also more likely to take more sick days as well. So people who are comfortable with dishonesty are more likely to take sick days when they don't actually need them.
So people who take a lot of sickies, and this is a very, very, very small percentage of the workforce, are actually revealing something about their personality which should alert an employer. Is that right?
Well, surveys suggest that the majority of people actually do have on occasion taken sick days. Younger people think that that's more okay than older people, for a start. People in manual occupations, semi-skilled labour are more likely to have taken them as well. Professionals are least likely to admit to have taken sick days. And in terms of personality, we find that people who are more emotionally unstable and less conscientious, less diligent, that'll probably show in their work as well, are also more likely to have taken sick days.
OK, so people who take a lot of sick days who aren't sick are probably not particularly desirable workers to have in your workforce, right?
Well, they're going to be less productive, I suspect.
OK. Mark, sorry, can we come back? What was the worst centre for people taking sickies? Go on, surprise us.
The worst centres were... the big difference wasn't so much in who takes the most, so much as who took the least. Everywhere else is pretty much the same on average. But the largest centres are the ones where we typically find the most sickies being pulled.
OK, what do you think of this legislation, which would require people... Well, if employers want it, would require people to produce a doctor's certificate after only 1 day. Given what you have found out, is it needed?
I think in an ideal world, a staff member should be able to go to their employer and say, look, I may not be sick, but I actually want to take a day off.
Yeah, wouldn't that be
civilised? I hope that it'll be taken seriously and also it won't count against them. At the same time, I think the point behind this legislation is the slightly suspicious angle, which is that the employer should be able to trust that that's actually the case. And clearly, with a very small minority of employees, that's not actually something that can be relied upon. At the same time, I think employers face a really tricky balance here. They don't want to appear unnecessarily suspicious, draconian, asking for compliance, because that's going to have an impact on the extent to which employees feel trusted, the extent to which they feel positive about their business, the extent to which they're loyal. And actually, research overseas shows that it's going to cost an employer much more to actually replace someone who leaves because they're disgruntled than it would have been to pay out a few days' sick leave. OK, so in short, is the legislation needed, do you think? No, I don't believe that it is.
Dr. Marc Wilson from Victoria University in Wellington, who has studied the psychology of the sickie. Thanks so much, Mark. Nice to talk to you.